Hi guys, so I just registered my domain sysadmingirl.com with Amazon Web Services Route 53 service they offer. And for $12, I was able to register for 1 year, which is great. So next year around this time, I have to remember to renew it. Now that's where the problem is. I always forget to renew my domains. If I don't see the email, I'll forget, and then my domain won't work, and I have to catch it and make sure this, to go through and renew it. So I want to make sure it doesn't happen where it lapses and my domain's not working for a while. So you want to be careful, especially if you're a web developer, maybe you work with a lot of clients or you work for a company and you registered a few domains for them. You want to make sure it doesn't lap and your domain expires and then it no longer will resolve if someone's trying to access your website or any services on your domain. So you want to make sure you remember to register your domain. So today I thought I'd show you how to do a quick check and monitor and let you know when your domain is no longer resolving to a valid IP address and how you can be notified if your domain is no longer resolving. So just keep watching and I'll show you how it's easy to check and keep track of when your domain stops working. So here is my brand new website. I know it needs some work. I'll work on it. But I just want to do a quick point out that I did pay for my domain here. So I paid $12 through Amazon Web Services to get this domain name. I paid for 1 year. So I want to make sure I don't forget because they send you an email and I get so many emails every day that it's easy for me to miss it, and then I'll lose my domain name and I would have to renew it, and then there'll be a gap in time where it might not be valid and people trying to get to my site and having issues. This is my personal site, so it's not a big deal, but if this was a site for like a business, very big deal. So you want to make sure your company's not losing money simply because you didn't pay the domain registration renewal fee. And you missed the email. So I want to make sure I'm checking for this. So if you're like a small to medium sized company, you won't forget. Maybe there's like only a couple texts. But if you're a big company also and you're registering a lot of domain names, you want to make sure you stay on top of it and you don't forget any because it's easy to slip through the cracks. So I'm going to set up a Nagios service that monitors to make sure my domain name goes to a valid IP address, and then that way it will contact me if that stops working, if my domain no longer resolves to a valid IP address. So I'm going to log into my Nagios server here, and I want to set up a new service to be monitored. So I'm going to go ahead and run a configuration wizard, and it's built in. So this is something you don't have to add a new service. You don't have to download a new script and add it. I might do that later with some more advanced DNS queries. But for a quick, just to make sure a domain name is valid to valid IP address, I'm going to click on run a configuration wizard, and it's right there, DNS query. It's right on the top there. So super easy. It's pretty popular to actually monitor something like this because it is something that easily can be forgotten. Or if you work in a company where somehow your DNS server entries somehow get modified incorrectly, pretty rare, but it can happen. Especially if you get compromised or your company's been hacked in some sort of way, that's a probably easy thing for them to modify. But I'm going to put my fully qualified domain name here that I paid for to Amazon. So I paid for sysadmingirl.com. And I could go ahead and hit next. You could also do www and your host name, or if it's like a subdomain, of course, you could always check for that. So it's whatever you want to check for. I'm checking for the top level of the domain I paid for. So I put my fully qualified domain name. I could put in an IP address there, but I'm using Amazon Web Services. So in that case, the way they host it through S3 bucket, it's a little unusual, which I'll talk about a little later. So I could specify a very specific DNS server that I want to query. So I want to say not just do an NS lookup, but I want to do an NS lookup against a specific DNS server running bind. It could technically be running Windows DNS server as well. But so it has two options here for DNS resolution and DNS IP match. Now, depending if you have a forward and reverse lookup, that means if a host domain name goes to a valid IP address, that's your DNS resolution. But does your DNS IP address match? So that means that's the reverse. So if your IP address goes to your domain, I'm using Amazon Web Services S3 bucket. So in that case, it will not, just because how they manage this service, it's not the same IP address every time. How often do I want to check? Every 5 minutes. You could up this. So if you want to, you don't need to probably check this every 5 minutes. You could technically check it once an hour, every 60 minutes or so, maybe every 120 minutes, every 2 hours. Of course, I want to be modified. If this stops working, I want to be modified right away. So I make sure I go in there and renew my registration. And
So I want to make sure I'm modified, and maybe all technicians at my company be notified if there is a problem with our domain name, because that's a big deal. So go ahead and click all contacts. I'll go ahead and hit next. After that, we're just going to add it to our host group. This is one of our Linux servers. I'll go ahead and click on Linux. I'll hit next, and then I'll hit apply. So that way it's going to apply our new configuration so we can start monitoring our service. We click on our status details, and you can see the host is already green, and it's going to do our DNS IP match and DNS resolution. So it's checking two different things. So this is already saying that this is up, our domain is up, and then it's going to go ahead and it's pending, so it's going to take us a few minutes. If you look at that check date, you go ahead and see 1969, December 31st. I believe that's considered the birth date of Unix. Now we're waiting for it to come back to give us status check. If we're going to go ahead and open up PowerShell, and I want to show you just what I mean by the forward and reverse lookup. So if I do an NS lookup, sysadmingirl.com, it's coming back with a valid IP address, 52.219.20.47. So that is our valid IP address. But now let's look at the reverse. Now if I do an NS lookup on that IP address, notice how it does not come back with the name sysadmingirl.com. It comes back with S3 website US West 1 Amazon Web Services.com. So that is a Amazon Web Service S3 bucket object URL for a static. So it's giving us a rotating IP address. So every time I do an NS lookup, sysadmingirl.com, it's going to come back with a different but valid IP address. So again, this is really depending if you have any sort of like web hosting with round robin, for example, the IP address might change. So in those cases, you might notice that the forward and reverse will not always be the same results. So you want to be careful if you're doing a status check, because again, like if you're like me, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that DNS IP match because it's not going to work for me in this case. And if you do any sort of round robin DNS for any sort of load balancing, you might encounter the same issue. But I still want to make sure my DNS domain name is actually going to a valid IP address. So I will go ahead and keep the second service. Now, if you're not sure in your environment which one you have, I would just recommend doing an NS lookup on the domain name and the IP address back and forth a few times just to check if there's any changes in the IP address it resolves to or the host name it resolves to. So just give yourself a quick check to make sure it's behaving the way you think it's behaving in your environment. And it's easy enough to do with PowerShell. It just takes a few minutes. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove the service that I know is not going to ever return a OK status, and that's the DNS IP match. So if I go ahead and click on that service, I'm going to bring up the advanced configuration options for this service, and in there it does have the delete option. So it does tell me DNS critical unexpected sysadmin girl got bad IP address. So that IP address is the one that, if you notice, it was probably worked in the forward but did not work in the reverse. So that's why it's returning this DNS critical, because it got an unexpected IP address. So under configure, you go ahead and delete this service, and then we don't have to worry about it. But again, it might be worth trying your environment to go ahead and set it up, see if it returns back okay. Maybe your environment is not like mine, and you go ahead and hit delete, and then it'll be fine. You don't have to do this delete option like I'm doing right here. So I go ahead and hit continue, and then I could check out the different options I have here. So it's giving me a status check. It's showing my performance. All right, so I kind of deleted this and recreated a couple times, so that's why you're seeing a little spike there up and down. If you go in here, you can check how long it's been okay, as well as I could go ahead and add a comment. So I want to add a comment of when this is going to expire. So it's just a quick reference for myself and any other technicians in the company. So I'm going to say it's going to expire 12/23/18. So about 1 year, probably 1 year and maybe a day less of when it's going to expire. And I have to make sure it is renewed by then. Right. So now if I go back to overview, it's showing my comment there, and I should leave it there for future reference to when it might be expired. So just a quick way of knowing when the expiration date is coming. So thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you guys next time.
Thanks for watching, guys. I hope this was helpful. I'll see you guys next time. And don't forget to keep track of how your domain's doing. Bye, guys.